The following program, Know the Cause, is paid for by Mediatrition Incorporated.
Welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us today. In the middle of the show, I'm going to do a little segment. Why are we Americans so sick? Starting with kids, why are we Americans so sick? You know what the elephant in the room is? Wait about 17, 18 minutes and I'll tell you. Toward the bottom of the show, Dr. John Trowbridge, a dear friend of mine, talks about kids and yeast. In the middle of the show, Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. He has a PhD and a naturopathic doctorate degree. He's going to talk about this. When this is bad, no probiotics, lots of constipation, it all seems to be bad, okay? Opening today's show, statin drugs for cholesterol, cancer, all sorts of disorders. Why are they working? What are these statin drugs? Let's take it away.
For the past 45 years, I have dedicated my life and my whole career to finding the root cause of disease. And I now know with certainty that we must play a role in our own health care. I'm a self-care advocate, and you know what? Every time you change your diet for the better, exercise, or swallow a nutritional supplement, so are you. Now welcome to Know the Cause.
You know, an excellent article came out just a short time ago that said antifungal drugs seem to help cancer patients. Now, we've known this for about 5 years, but all of a sudden there are others, Lamisil, called terbinafine in the pharmacy, helping cancer patients. Folks, statin drugs meant to lower cholesterol help cancer patients. They also kill fungus. Let's walk down that aisle. Statin drugs and fungus. Statin drugs have been shown in many studies to stop the progress of fungal infections and to kill certain common fungal species. This article, Antifungal Effects of Statins in Pharmacology and Therapeutics, a couple of years ago says this, and I quote, "In general, statins do possess antifungal activity targeting a broad spectrum of fungal organisms." What that means is not only Candida, but Aspergillus and other organisms, and they're amazed that these drugs you swallow and your cholesterol goes from 300 down to 200 play a role in preventing heart disease. You see, I think heart disease is a fungal condition many times, and by lowering your cholesterol, that's a good thing. Statin drugs, couldn't I do that with vitamin B3 and exercise and so forth, the way I have for years? Talk to your doctor about that. Statin drugs and cholesterol. Statin drugs work by blocking an enzyme known as the HMG-CoA, and it's a reductase, which the body needs to make cholesterol. So if a pill works, folks, if a chemical works, it inhibits, blocks, or subdues a pathway that God put there. Selective serotonin reuptake, that's a good thing, we all have that. But to inhibit it becomes a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and those are antidepressants. We block something normal, an enzyme made by the body. Is that the best way to lower your level of these statin drugs now in cancer? Specifically, statins reduce or block the activity of the enzyme HMG-CoA reductase, American Cancer Society. So here's what I surmise. Statin drugs work to lower cholesterol by the identical mechanism they're used to reduce the risk of cancer, the inhibition of that enzyme. Might people who take statins to lower their blood fats also be at a reduced risk for cancer? Is it just blocking this enzyme that reduces the cancer risk? Isn't that fascinating? They found that the way to prevent, this will eventually probably become cancer prevention. I don't think they're recommending it yet for that. Well, I don't know. The same enzyme that's blocked so your cholesterol doesn't elevate blocks that enzyme so cancer doesn't grab hold of you. And by the way, they kill fungus. See where I'm going with this? Statins starve cancer cells to death. Researchers at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore discovered that statin drugs may do more than just lower blood fats. More than 35 million Americans take statins daily to lower their blood cholesterol levels. Now, in experiments with human cells in a laboratory, researchers have added to growing evidence that the ubiquitous drug may kill cancer cells and have uncovered clues on how they do it. How they do it. Let's see. We've known for 25 years statins kill fungus. Is that how they might induce apoptosis? POP, yeah? cancer cells? Kills fungus. We've got to be much deeper in science, folks. I can see them all holding their bellies laughing in a big round room, you know, with a big table in the middle, ha ha ha, like cancers linked to fungus. We're now using Sporanox, the toenail fungus drug, to help cancer patients. Now statins, antifungal, help cancer patients. The researchers stated there have been epidemiological indications that people who take statins long-term have fewer and less aggressive cancers, and that statins can kill cancer cells in the laboratory. Recall that statins are antifungal drugs. Might cancer have much to do with fungus? And what about our Superman gene? Folks, we all have a gene called a p53 gene. It prevents cancer cells from getting aggressive. If you can mutate that gene, cancer runs rampant. 2017. Researchers at the University of Kansas Medical Center have found that high doses of drugs commonly used to fight high cholesterol can destroy a rogue protein produced by a damaged gene in association with nearly half of all cancers. I think it's up to 60, 70%. You and I own a Superman gene, and I'm telling you, something destroys it. If Doug's right, statin drugs, then wouldn't that something be fungus? Would fungus destroy our p53 gene? I'm glad you asked. Dr. Iwakuma, an associate professor at the Department of Cancer Biology, and his team have published the first research showing how the use of statins such as Lipitor, Crestor, and Mevacor can shut down structurally mutated p53 genes, proteins, that accelerate cancer progression while not harming the other genes. Folks, look at this. Fungal mycotoxin mutates p53 gene. I've known this for decades. The mycotoxin, aflatoxin B1, made by common species of Aspergillus fungus, is known to cause, and I blacken that out so you remember it, p53 mutations, yet more proof of a fungus linked to cancer. It's all lined up, folks. It's all lined up. There are none so blind as those who will not see. But now we're talking about statins to prevent cancer. Good idea? Or do you think antifungal program would help more? Just a thought.
Anytime you have a bowel issue, you want to look and see what's the liver doing, what's the gallbladder doing, is the acidity in the stomach strong enough to break down the food.
Friends, think about this name, the Cancer Breakthrough Summit. It's about time somebody did it. And this wonderful doctor contacted me one time, several months ago, and said, I'd like you to voice your opinion to teach my group how fungus plays a role in cancer. And so we did that. We did it a couple times, and I gotta tell you, I fell in love with this guy. I began to look at his history. He's not only a naturopathic doctor, he has a PhD degree. He's got a large clinic in Boise, Idaho. When I began to study what he was talking about, the same things I talk about, I called his office and said, would you do me a favor? Could you spend some 5-minute segments teaching us? Dr. Karlfeldt, Michael Karlfeldt is his name. The Karlfeldt Clinic, I'll spell that before the end of this segment. Welcome to the show, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm so excited to be part of your show. Thank you so much for having me.
It's one of the things you highlight on your website, and is the importance of elimination. And I got to tell you, we're a country that doesn't eliminate enough. And I don't just mean, elimination through the bowels, but sweating. What is your take on that? When your clinic, all the doctors you have there, when you begin to see really toxic individuals, are they eliminating okay?
Well, so and that is such a fascinating subject, because we know children, we know animals, they eat, they poop, right. and that's the way it's supposed to be. So I had a young lady, she came to me, she was dealing with headaches, exhaustion, abdominal pain, and so I asked her, how frequently to go to the bathroom, and she said, well, I go regularly. And I said, well, how often is that? And she said, well, every time I have a period, I have a bowel movement.
Wow.
So there, because we don't move the toxins out, it got to go somewhere. So then it gets into tissue, it goes into, it moves in the bloodstream, and it goes and hit all the different weak areas, and we feel horrible. So Elimination is key for us to feel healthy.
It is for everybody. As a general question, what do you like? Do you like probiotics, psyllium, slipperium? What do you do to quickly help the person realize they should be going every day?
Well, you can use those different tools. Yeah, probiotic becomes key in order to be able to shift the microbiome, but you want to look upstream as well. So anytime you have a bowel issue, you want to look and see what's the liver doing, what's the gallbladder doing, is the acidity in the stomach strong enough to break down the food? Is your pancreas secreting the enzymes that it needs? So then you want to bring in different bitters like gentian, dandelion, Oregon grape. Those are powerful tools in addition to digestive enzymes, also probiotic, and then also good quality fiber like psyllium, apple pectin, so forth.
Tell me the typical patient that comes to Boise, Idaho, gets on an airplane, right, leaves from Dallas or New York, California, and comes to see you. Are they polysymptomatic? Do they have many things going on, or just one?
Frequently, they deal with more complex issues at that time. So they've looked around, they've gone to 15, 20 different doctors, and they recognize we need to look, we need to turn stones that we haven't turned before. And that's when they come to me so that we can do more of a deeper assessment as to what is the underlying factor. Why am I toxic? Why am I in pain? Why am I exhausted? Why may I be dealing with an autoimmune condition, or why do I have cancer?
Well, speaking of cancer, a better way to treat cancer. He's authored a book recently, A Better Way to Treat Cancer. Teach us in the final 40 seconds here, a better way to treat cancer.
So cancer is a very complex disease, and it's multifactorial. So you cannot just look at one component. You got to look at, where am I at spiritually? Where am I at emotionally? Where am I at relationship-wise? You got to look at toxicity. Where am I at? How am I eliminating toxins? And that's why this subject becomes so important. How do I get toxins out of the system? We have what's called the 4 ways out, the 4 eliminatory pathways. Are we maximizing that? And then we can move toxins out of the cells in order to maximize the health of the cell. Because if the cell is not healthy, then it is likely to become diseased and then move towards a cancer process.
Finally, one question: does prayer help?
Prayer is such a powerful tool. Never underestimate the power of prayer.
Thank you. God bless you, Dr. Karfeld. By the way, Dr. Karfeld can be reached at the Karfeld Center, KARLFELDT Center.com, the Karfeld Center. Thank you, sir. Good to chat with you.
Thank you.
My wife and I were watching. Do you get Turner Classics? I love that. We have Dish, Turner Classics. Old movies, 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Folks, there was a beach scene, and everybody on that beach is rail thin. 1935. It's absolutely amazing what happened to us, right? I'll try and answer that right now. I'm glad you're watching. Why are people so sick in 2022? Look at this. I've used this back a dozen years ago, this graphic. The number of children with developmental disorders, including autism, ADD, has increased by 17% between 97 and 08 in the U.S., according to a new study. That means that in 2008, 15% of all U.S. children, or nearly 10 million children, had a developmental disorder according to the study. It's almost like we're hungry to hyperdiagnose anything. He's not growing fast enough. Well, he stutters. Well, he's reading the words mixed up. Why? Certainly diet couldn't play a role in this. I think diet does if you have one precursor. Stick with me. Death from cancer have skyrocketed. Down there at the left, 1930, and over to the right, the year 2000. I mean, this folks, is every disease is going up. Look at heart disease. Heart disease statistics. You can't read that. I made it kind of tiny, and thank you, American Heart, American Journal. .org. That's 1900, then it goes up to 10, 20, 30, 50, 60. Look at heart disease. Look at any disease. Where was it before this thing came along? The precursor, I think, to all diseases. Let's keep going. Iatrogenically means medically caused obesity epidemic. The authors also correctly highlighted the incontrovertible evidence that the obesity and metabolic syndrome epidemic we are facing is largely drug-caused, as highlighted by this. Given this, we must accept that we are essentially complicit in greatly increasing our own patient morbidity and mortality, and that this epidemic within an epidemic we caused is iatrogenic. That was The Psychiatrist, volume 37, number 1, 10 years ago. We're causing illness and death. That was the first time I really saw them say, whoops, couldn't be our pills, could it? Are doctors, hospitals, clinics iatrogenically inducing ill health? They don't mean to, folks. These are some of the finest people. I have a lot of friends who are doctors, nurses, and I'm telling you, they're stellar. Their training, I don't think, was, but they are stellar. They became doctors and nurses, medical people, lab techs, LPNs, LVNs. They became medical people to help people. They had a craving for this when they were younger. God bless them. They're doing wonderfully, but what if their education was flawed a tiny bit? Let's keep going. Here's my take. The elephant in the room the past 70 years is antibiotics. Soon after World War II, antibiotics were introduced. In agriculture, we all know this, they're used as growth promoters. These are neurotoxic fungal mycotoxins, and as such, when overused, can cause most any illness known to man, yet they are overlooked as a possible cause to most any illness. Think about it. 1940, beginning of World War II, we didn't have antibiotics. Today, folks, the damage I believe done by antibiotics is called seeding. I don't think the 7-year-old who takes antibiotics becomes obese or has more risk of cancer, but I think if that 7-year-old becomes 9 and 12 and 15 and 35 years old and continues on antibiotics, I'm pretty certain there's a link there in illness. Okay, antibiotics can be life-saving when used judiciously, but medical journals admit their overuse is common. However, they're linked with neurological symptoms, epileptic seizures, heart disease symptoms, obesity, and even cancer. Many of you know I do a lot of my research on a NIH, National Institute of Health, website called PubMed. If you got a grant, you got to publish it on PubMed. There's probably millions of papers on it. So let's talk about that. The National Institute of Health website, PubMed.gov, stores medical research articles. When you type into their search engine the words antibiotic-induced, 132,000 papers are listed. Antibiotic overuse can lead to significant human mortality and morbidity. Talk to your doctor if you're routinely taking antibiotics, and just take a minute here and let me land on this. I won't say a word. It comes from a book in 1979 called The Genus Penicillium, and take a read. We knew it 50 years ago. It's not going away. Be careful with antibiotics. I hope that helps. Now for something really serious, folks. Silva asks on Facebook, for over a decade, I've had episodes with vomiting and headaches. The retching alone might induce the headaches, but I want you to know something. Certain fungi cause disease in man. You know what one of the mycotoxins made by the fungus is called? Vomitoxin. Vomitoxin can be in our grain supply, folks. And so do you eat cereal, donuts, pasta, things of that sort, breads? Could there be a mycotoxin called vomitoxin? It's also called deoxynivalenol, DON, if your doctor wants to know. Maybe. If I were you, I'd go to a doctor and say, let me try Sporanox, the toenail fungus drug, which is now working for cancer patients, and Statin, and I'm going to follow Kaufman's #1 diet. I'm going to try and starve whatever is making me vomit, if in fact it's fungus, and I want to take an antifungal drug that will get into my brain and throughout my body. Diflucan or Sporanox, Statin, and the Kaufman 1 diet You're going to know in a week or two if we're on the right track. Is this a fungus? You and your doctor will know. I wish you guys could see what goes on behind the scenes here when Dr. John Trowbridge is in. He wrote the book, The Yeast Syndrome. He's a medical doctor. When did you write this?
1985, published in 86.
And it's sold, it's got to be 1 million copies or more. I mean,
Yes.
This is
Still published.
one of the most, and my 13 books sell and sell for a reason. If this was nonsense, you know, medical books would sell off the shelves and these wouldn't. This is real. Why did you write The Yeast Syndrome?
Oh, well, I wrote it because of Billy Crook. When I met him, the Yeast Connection was his book, and it was just sheafs of paper. John, look at this new chapter and stuff, and he'd typewritten it out. And he published it and had to drive around the country trying to sell it to health food stores and such because nobody would publish it.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, well, it's good, but it's very basic, and I wanted something a little bit more science sophistication for people, for my patients. So I wrote that, and 17 publishers turned it down.
Yep.
And then Bantam said, well, okay, we'll give it a try.
Yeah.
Our editor got real points for that one when she
I'll bet.
when she took that one on, because she advanced very well after that.
Do you see children? I want to talk for a minute about children, and here's why. Letter came in, my kids have been sick with various infections. Could they have what Dr. Trowbridge talks about, the yeast syndrome? How can I treat them if they don't like the foods I cook during the break? You said I like the funnel method.
I like the funnel, just shove it down. Actually, I used to treat kids, and moms would say, listen, you know, I think my kid has it too, and we talk about it, and I go, yeah. I said, but you're going to be very unhappy. Why is that? And I said, because in 8 or 10 months they'll be done, and you'll still be cooking along, getting better, because their biochemistry is so easily fixed at that age. I stopped taking care of kids because of the parents. And what they do, oh, well, I couldn't do that. They wouldn't do. And I'm going, wait a second, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what you need to do to make it happen easily for them. If kids are introduced to crappy foods, they get crappy lives. And if you will introduce them to the really good foods, incidentally, they'll hold out for 4 days.
Yeah.
They won't hold out past 4 days. They will eat.
I remember that. I did a research paper with Dr. Everett Hughes at USC on this very thing, you know, optimum time of feeding kids. And they will hold out a few days, and then it goes away. Talk to me a little bit about they won't eat my food. Oh, gosh. Should we change? Should mom and dad parent? You know, should mom and dad say, for 2 weeks, we're going to do this with you?
It would be nice if everybody did it, because people are steak and potatoes folks. I never eat vegetables, whatever. And it's like, wait a minute, that's the liquor of life. Those are what you are made of. Okay, but we have generations where we've just raised folks not knowing how to eat for better health. And our doctors are not helpful because they know about zero about nutrition. The key is if the family will do it. I had one family, this goes way back, and all of a sudden we're not seeing them, but we saw somebody every week, right? And we called and said, what's up? And they said, well, you kept telling us to stop doing soda pops, and we did. And they all got better.
They're all fine. We're all fine. That's, if you love that humor, this is deep. Deeper than the Yeast Connection, I think, deeper than my books. But it's a must read if you're suffering and running from doctor to doctor to doctor and your insurance is going crazy. Worse, you're getting worse. The Yeast Syndrome. Thank you for writing that.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Dr. John Trowbridge. Kids and yeast, all the time. You got to think this way, folks. Thank you also, Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, for coming in today and answering the questions we have. What role does the gut play in systemic diseases? Talk about probiotics, elimination, and so forth. Really, really important. I asked the question, developmental childhood disorders. What is causing them? Could the elephant in the room be antibiotics? As we become adults, could they be statin drugs? Drugs, drugs, drugs. God bless you, folks. See you next time. Bye-bye.
The preceding program, Know the Cause, was paid for by Mediatrition Incorporated.